Hello everyone, James here. So this is the first episode of the Kirklees Guitar School podcast. This has taken quite a lot of time and quite a lot of effort to get off the ground, and I really do hope you enjoy it. In today's episode, we're going to talk about hammer-ons and how to get some clean, good, effective hammer-ons with songs like Albatross and Run to You. And we've also talked about how to get the most out of your Fender and Gibson style pickup selectors and how to get the most out of the controls that are on board of your guitar. We've also taken some questions from the Facebook group and answered them in a little bit more detail. I really do hope you enjoy it. Let us know what you thought about it in the comments. Hello everyone, welcome to the Kirklees Guitar School podcast. So we're trying something a little bit different today. We're joined today by my co-host George. What we're going to talk about today?
Well, today on the brand new Kirklees Guitar School podcast, let's have a look at our set list for today. So we're going to look at our technical focus.
Right.
Every week we're going to have a look at something a little bit different. Today it's hammer-ons, the essential guitar technique that every player should know.
Okay.
I think. We're then going to dive neck deep and look at pickup dynamics between a Gibson style guitar and a Fender style guitar.
Sounds good to me.
From there we're going to look at some gig stories, whether they're good, bad, evil or resilient. We'll delve into that as a bit of a confessional.
Okay, and then you're going to teach us we're going to take some questions from the Facebook group, and you're going to teach us a little lick out of a Whitesnake tune today.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to have a riff of the week. We will update that as we move along. But I'd love to know, James, has this week been a rock or a roll for you?
I'd say rock. It's been good this week.
Brilliant.
We put a video out of the weekend on a video lesson on the YouTube channel about Wish You Were Here. Mm-hmm. We started this month's challenge on the Facebook group. So yes. we have a Facebook group that some of the students are part of, and I do monthly challenges and different topics. And this month it's a 4-week series on improvisation. And
we have week one's just gone out now.
Week one's literally just gone out, and yeah, we've got a good response so far. I think we had about 70 people sort of said that they wanted to get involved, which is excellent.
Yeah.
And we're enjoying watching both of those. By the way, everybody, please do keep up the good work. And I also did a video on my pedals and how I set all that up. For the school, we're getting ready for half term.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we do what we call rock camps over half term, which are we essentially put loads of kids together into bands and make a load of noise for 6 hours at a time. It's great fun. And we're doing some lessons and some of us group classes interspersed. You're taking the rock camps this time.
I am, yes, 2 days of rock camp. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and then Andy's taking the teenagers later on. So yeah, it's very, very busy at Kirklees Guitar School this week, but good busy. We're working on lots of stuff. What about you?
It's going to be a roll, I'm afraid.
Okay.
Rock and roll, it's going to be a roll. I own a 2006 Squier Telecaster.
The blue one?
Yeah, dark blue. It looks like Keith Richards has mistreated it. It's been used. I've had it 12 years now.
Right, okay.
I went to a simple string change on it the other day.
Right.
And as I went to change the A string, the tuner just disintegrated.
Right,
It fell out of the back of the guitar.
Is it one of those where you turn the peg and it all of a sudden just goes completely limp?
Yeah, it went very limp. Well, it went very stiff first, then very limp, and then it fell out of the back.
Right.
And I thought, I'll just put it back together. No, a few bits of metal were on my kitchen table.
Right, okay.
Now, that's very annoying, because I now need to look for a set of obscure tuners.
And how are you going to go about finding those?
So I'm Google.
Right, okay.
I'm just going to Google 2006 Fender Squier Telecaster tuner. If not, there is a little marking on the back, like on this guitar. It says Grover tuners.
Okay.
I think they're called PW3 tuners.
Right, so what would you put that code into Google?
I'd put that in and have a look and A, see what's cheaper, or B, I could look at a second-hand one to buy bits from.
I think it's really important to sort of say for those of us, those of you that are listening today and watching, not all Fender parts are completely interchangeable. So I couldn't take the neck off this guitar and fit it to George's Telecaster, and vice versa. It's not as the original design was supposed to be like that, but there's so many different iterations of Squier, Fender, Classic Vibe, American Standard, Custom Shop, and they're all ever so slightly different. And it's not as plug and play as we as we're led to believe, is it?
If not, I could buy just an off-the-shelf set of tuners and do a bit of a DIY job, which is something anyone could really do.
Well, that's a really common thing in the vintage guitar market, where somebody will say, will buy a 1959 Les Paul, and when it's 10 years old and it's not really worth much money, and then the tuner breaks, and you can't find any that fit, so you just drill some holes into the back of it, and then 60 years later, that guitar's worth $500,000, or it's worth 300,000 because somebody drilled holes in the back of it and didn't drill pilot holes, just sort of screwed it in. So yeah, be very careful with your guitar modifications.
But as annoying that was, it's actually been quite a good week, if I'm honest. It's been I've run adult band classes here at the school.
Okay.
We've got a band called MOW, Mondays on Wednesdays, because we all have lessons on a Monday, but we rehearse on a Wednesday.
Right, okay.
And we're doing a few new songs at the moment. I've been tabbing out some lead sections. Rather than everyone playing the same down, down, up strumming pattern, we've got some guitarists on a lead line, some on a different lead line, some on that strumming pattern, because that's crucial. It's your bread in your sandwich, if you like.
Okay.
So yeah, it's been good to see those songs come together in the band.
Excellent. Yeah. So I think just before we go on to a technical focus section, I don't think it'd be a bad idea, because a lot of us audience, especially those of us on YouTube, know who I am, know what I'm about, but unless you're an actual visiting customer of Kirklees Guitar School, nobody knows who you are, George. Would you mind just sort of giving us a little bit of background on you and what you're about?
So if you don't have lessons with me, my name's George, as James has said. I've taught here at KGS for 3 years now, 4 years nearly, we're getting on a little bit now, and I gig up and down the country as a duo or in a band, during the summer mainly. I've played guitar for 16 years now. Right. So I think I've got a decent amount of experience under my belt to bestow any knowledge I may or may not have. As I said, run band classes, and when I'm not here playing guitar, I'll be writing about cars, messing around with classic cars. That's when you're not playing. We've all got something else in life, but for me, it's cars and music. Those are the two things there. So hopefully that gives people a bit more of an insight, and you should be able to catch me on the private Facebook group as well.
Yeah, you started posting on there, which
put
is
some
really
videos
good,
in, which is nice, hearing people's feedback, and I like seeing other people's. As one of your students put a video in, and sorry, you've been working on some vibrato.
Yeah, Sean's really been doing really well recently. Yeah, well,
so
they all have to be fair. In the time that we've been doing that, I think that Facebook group's been going for about 3 months. And at Christmas, we do this thing called Riffmas at Christmas, where instead of the 12 days of Christmas, we have the 12 days of Riffmas, and everybody's having a go. There's a new video lesson every couple of days with free tabs that go with them. And any of the tabs on the on the YouTube lessons that we do, you can download from the Facebook group for free.
It's a game changer. That is tossed around a lot, but most of these videos you watch online have the tabs, but you're squinting to see them. But if you're in the Facebook group,
you can't print them out. And I encourage my students to scribble on their sheets, annotate them, highlight parts. If you keep missing the same bit again and again and again, make a note of it, because that's what I do in a professional, in a professional capacity. And actually, sometimes when you're depping for somebody, so when you're sitting in for somebody, you'll inherit somebody else's charts, and you can see all their scribblings and their swear words and
quiet
one
here,
thing. That's it. Yeah, and it really does help. So I'd encourage anybody to do that.
Well, on those tabs that you see, you will see some hammer-ons potentially.
Right. Okay.
So I think that brings us into our first technical focus for episode 1.
Okay.
So yes, we are looking at hammer-ons today. Now, if you're unsure, what is a hammer-on?
So a hammer-on is essentially buy one, get one free for notes. If I'm going to play the 5th fret and the 7th fret on the A string. So if I hammer between those notes, I can pick those notes, or I can pick the first 5 and then use my ring finger to I'm actually from a distance bashing it into the fret to yield a second note, but I don't have to pick it a second time.
Nice.
So you think of something like Paranoid by Black Sabbath.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't go.
No.
There's actually a hammer-on the power chord, and then there's a couple of hammer-ons in the little pentatonic bit after it. Completely different song if I go.
Absolutely, yeah.
Now, a lot of people don't, when we discuss hammer-ons, and it's what we call legato playing. So legato means smooth. If we play something legato, it's all lovely, and I started off with a major scale, but I decided to go spider
exercise. It's a cold morning.
Now the opposite of that's what we call staccato. Listen to the difference.
It's in there somewhere if you
It
look.
is. Hammer-ons help you play more legato.
It's
So I'm playing that major scale. Sorry, George.
No, you're fine.
I'm just playing that major scale, and I'm only picking the first note on each string, and then I'm using my fingers to hammer on. Is there anything you've got to add to that?
It's a smoother way. We're all looking to sound better as guitarists, as musicians. It's such a cheap way to get to where you want to be.
Okay.
I think it's such an easy technique to add. Now, I've thought of a couple of examples to get us there, because there's no point learning it in a scale. Well, I mean, there's every point in learning it.
Yeah, potentially, but more practical applications.
Yeah, practical
I understand what you're
applications,
saying.
one of which would include Albatross.
Right, okay.
Peter Green, Fleetwood Mac, late 60s, era of Fleetwood Mac. Now, Albatross, the initial start of that riff, apart from the chords, starts with a hammer-on.
Yeah,
Straight
okay.
there, 2 notes. So I'm on the 2nd fret of the A string, which is a B note on my first finger. And as James said, we're going to pick that first note. I'm then going to hammer on with my ring finger, which lands on the 4th fret of the A string.
And I think it bears repeating when you're hammering those notes on. Don't be afraid to. I don't know if that's coming through on the microphones. Don't be afraid to physically bash your ring finger into that fret, but don't bash it. Don't sort of hammer onto it and then let all that pressure off. All that gusto needs to carry on straight through the string. But also, I feel like something that gets missed is if you're hammering on between fret 2 and fret 4 of the A string like we're doing here, once you've made that hammer, initially, you should have 2 points of contact to the fretboard.
Absolutely, yeah.
Whereas if you're letting go,
it's disappeared, it's gone.
Yeah, and you're trying to keep the ball in the air. That's the best way to think about it. That's the best way to think about it. Is there any other examples outside of that?
Yeah, so there's Run to You, Bryan Adams. Now, we all know the main riff.
You were trying to do it without a capo.
Yeah, without a capo. But there is a way to do it. There's a second lead guitar line. If you know the track, you'll know there's a really nice... Now, that's actually got an extra step from the initial hammer-on. But again, like James said, if you can see my fingers, that first finger never moves. Regardless if I'm playing on 10, I said it moved, but it stays where it is. So what I'm doing there, on the 9th fret of the G string, which is an E note, I'm going to play that 9, and then going to... Can you hear that? Ba-da, two-step
Now,
phrase.
why do we do hammer-ons? What's the point?
It's, as you said, it's 2 for 1.
Yeah.
It sounds nice, it's that legato playing, and it's a different technique. Now, if the beginning of that song had... Sounds like a doorbell.
Yeah.
It's not quite what you want. It's a technique. We all have tools as a guitarist, and that's one tool that we can
Well,
use.
something like Albatross, if I played it without... Obviously, we'll forget about... great lesson for this in the description. That
someone might have put something together.
Yeah, a funny-looking man with a beard taught it, and he did really well. Now, if I don't put any hammer-ons or just legato in general, so slides can be considered legato as well.
So you couldn't help yourself then, could you?
It's a bit plinky-plonky. You've got to think of the M&S advert.
Yeah,
it's got to sound like. So those of us that are at this side of the Atlantic, Marks and Spencers or M&S used the Albatross for their advert for years and years and years and years, and that sort of song's become synonymous with very, very posh food.
Yeah, you have to think about Dawn French talking about sausage rolls and pork pies, and then you're there.
So yeah, practice your hammer-ons this week, guys.
Definitely.
It's part of what I call the guitarist tool belt. You hear me refer to that quite regularly. That the guitarist, a good lead guitarist, should have, like a builder has in the tool belt. They'll have a hammer, a level, a screwdriver, pliers. We have hammer-ons, slides, pull-offs, vibrato, and as the podcast kind of develops, we are going to sort of look at more of these.
A few more, in our technical focus section, it'll really help. And with your improvising as well, if you're improvising through your scale in your challenge, if I had a hammer on there, it just makes it so much more
And just
efficient.
a sort of closing note on that, if you take something like the shape one of the minor pentatonic, you can practice doing that over 6 strings.
Back and forth,
yeah, so you could go like this. Now, I'm doing it fairly quickly for the purposes of demonstration, and we haven't got all day, but you should be focusing on getting those notes. The hammer should be at the same volume and should be played with the same velocity.
As if you were picking it?
As if you were picking it, correct. And it's also a great technique for if you want to inject a little bit more speed in when you're improvising, you can sort of start these. So hammer-ons and pull-offs and stuff's a really great way to get there with very minimal effort.
Yeah, I'd agree. Fab. So I think it's time to go neck deep now, James, which is something we've coined for this podcast.
So this next segment of the podcast is what we call Neck Deep. Now, this is a sort of regular segment for the podcast where we sort of discuss not necessarily the techniques of playing the guitar, but more about the equipment and how to get the most out of what you've got. So what we're going to talk about this week, George?
We're going to talk about pickups on our electric guitars, because across the potential 50 students I might teach in the week, there could be about good half of them that don't know what these do or what they're for. They're just there. It's like how you got a front door in your house. It just exists.
Yeah, you don't think about it. You just unlock it and go in it. Yeah, okay.
So we've both got two different styles of guitars. This is an Epiphone Les Paul standard with what we call humbucking pickups, whereas you've got something slightly different over there.
So yeah, I've got a 60s spec Stratocaster, which I'll go into depths of the spec when it's my turn to talk about that. But yeah, so let's start with the Lester. What's your? Have you never heard that before?
No, I haven't.
I
might start nicknaming it.
A Lester, Les Paul.
Yeah.
So you've got, what's this?
So this is a standard. This is a 2013 Epiphone Les Paul standard in berry blue burst, which has aged quite nicely. It's now got more of a brown tinge to it. But as far as the pickup layout is concerned, in this guys we've got a neck pickup and a bridge pickup. Now these are what we call humbuckers. Essentially, if you look at the visuals on James's Strat, now for those listening in the car, James has got one line of magnets. That's his pickup. Whereas the humbucker, underneath my shiny chrome plates, I would have 2 lines of pickups.
Yeah, essentially, you think of them as underneath those chrome plates, George has essentially got two of my pickups wound together. I know some people on Reddit will probably get really cross with us because there's a bit more to it than that.
There is, but for the sake of this podcast...
Simple Yorkshireman terms, more is more, George.
Yeah, more is more. Now, I have a 3-way pickup selector. So when the selector is closest to my chin, rather than facing the ground, it controls that neck pickup. And it gives the guitar, the Les Paul in particular, quite a nice deep sound. Good for chord playing. Now, as I move down, nice audible click, some ASMR there for everybody, I'm now controlling in what we call the middle position, which operates both pickups simultaneously.
Right.
Now that gives us a bit more treble in the mix.
And for those of us at the back, what is treble?
Treble is your higher frequencies. Think if you've got something that's very low, you'd call it bassing, whereas something a lot higher is your treble. Now, in music, we need a good mix.
A little bit more tinny, I think,
yeah,
is a good
tinny is a good way to put it, yeah.
Which isn't a bad thing when used correctly, by the way.
No, definitely, because if I'm on my middle pickup now, it sounds nice for chord playing still. But if I go to that treble position, can you hear that it's automatically a lot tinnier?
Sharper.
Now, if I go to something like Johnny Be Good, Chuck Berry, we can hear that instantly. Does it sound as good on the neck pickup? Doesn't sound bad, but there's different applications. Now, I always say to my students, now don't get me wrong, your pickup position isn't going to make or break your practice schedule. I think you'd agree with that.
Yeah.
But if I was playing above the 12th fret, I would stick to my neck pickup because of the dynamics of the instrument, whether it's a Les Paul or a Strat. Sounds a bit warmer up there.
Yeah.
Whereas if I go to my treble position, down to those floor on a Les Paul, it's a lot sharper.
But also in a live scenario, you would having that sharper sound isn't a bad thing.
No,
because what it means is you'll cut through the rest of the band, which is oftentimes I'll see guitarists and they could be playing the most amazing solo you've ever heard, but you can't hear them.
Yeah,
and we're sold so much equipment to with the promise of that not happening, when actually all you need to do is just have a little bit more treble, because how your guitar amp sounds in your bedroom when you're practicing compared to how it sounds on a stage.
Totally different,
and
yeah.
the acoustics of a room have so much to do with this kind of stuff. So don't be frightened of it, but also my general rule of thumb is I will add sort of a good sort of 2, 3, maybe 4 extra notches on the treble of that little Fender Princeton that I use when I'm playing live or in a big room with a band, just to make sure that it finds its place in the mix.
Yeah. Fab. So I've got this Les Paul with 2 pickups and 3 pickup selections.
Yep.
How does your Strat differ from my Les Paul?
So this is a Fender, what they call the Lacquer series. It's a Mexican-made Fender Stratocaster, but it's got a nitrocellulose finish, and it's very, very loosely based on a 1962. So if you'd have bought I love vintage guitars. As the podcast develops, you will begin to understand how much knowledge I've got in my head. Useless information, mind, but I can tell you all sorts about the idiosyncrasies of the Stratocaster. Yeah. Absolutely. So we've got on a 60s spec Stratocaster, you'd usually get a rosewood board, maple neck, nitrocellulose body, and 3-tone sunburst. Now we are on pretty much every Stratocaster has what we call a 5-way selector, this switch down here. Now, these are 5 different combinations of these 3 pickups. Now, I've got a little handy guide from the Fender website here, because I don't... If you know me and my playing and my approach, I don't think, I shall use the pickup selection in the 4th position because this will sound optimal. I'm always kind of doing stuff on the fly and on the cuff. To me, I don't think of pickup switch 4. I think I want to sound like Mark Knopfler.
Yeah, I'm the same. Yeah.
I want to sound a little bit sort of like Cream Clapton-y. I'll use the neck pickup. So I'll tell you what they all do, and I'm referring to my sheet, but I sort of think of the sound rather than the actual configuration of the pickups. I hope that makes sense.
It's a practical application there
yeah.
Isn't it? Yeah.
And just like with George's guitar, I'd start... So George's on the neck pickup where his switch was closest to the ceiling, the equivalent of that on a Stratocaster is right at the top. And for the purposes of today's demonstration, we're going to call that position 1. So that's just the neck pickup by itself. It's quite warm. And I think by proxy, it's worth mentioning that a Stratocaster just in general is a lot sharper sounding than a Les Paul, just because it doesn't have a coffee table's worth of mahogany.
No.
That the pickups are nailed
I am
into.
struggling.
Yeah?
It's heavy.
So it's a little bit bluesy. And then if I click it back into what we're going to call position 2 for today, we're using the neck pickup still, but it's also going to blend the middle pickup in. Now, the middle pickup introduces a little bit more of a sort of sharper sound. If I go back, that's neck pickup.
Very different.
Yeah. If I go across again, we're going to use the middle pickup exclusively. We describe that as having a lot of mids. Think Stevie Ray Vaughan. That kind of vibe. We then come across again into what I'm going to call position 4, which then uses the middle pickup again, but then it uses the neck pickup. Now the neck pickup on a Stratocaster, proceed with caution. They are very. If you thought George's was sharp, this one is incredibly sharp, and a 50s spec is even sharper. This kind of has that sort of sharp clarity, but then a little bit of that mid-focus kind of Stevie Ray Vaughan thing.
It reels it in a bit, doesn't it?
Well, I mentioned Mark Knopfler. You know, it's got that.
It's in there somewhere.
It's got that sort, but I think it's really good for if you're doing that Nile Rodgers kind of thing as well.
Funk is great, yeah.
As a working guitar player, I spend a lot of time doing that sort of scratchy kind of almost shaft style guitar playing. You know, I think Long Train Running or that kind of sound is used on either position 2 or position 4 as that. I think Nile Rodgers. And then as we go to the back pickup, it's really sharp. I'm just going to take my volume down just a smidge because I don't want to deafen us listeners.
Those car speakers out. Yeah.
So Paul Kossoff played a Les Paul traditionally, didn't he? But I think of that sort of 70s classic rock. If I had a pedal sort of plugged into we're using the Katanas today. The Katana Artist. It's really got some cojones.
It has,
know?
yeah.
When I'm doing a guitar solo and I'm playing this guitar in a band, I will exclusively go back to that pickup because it's like, no, I'm doing a solo. Listen to me.
Yes, that's another thing with the pickup selection. We've said they have their uses, and that's how you want to categorise them. But it's general rule of thumb. You'll see if you watch any live performance, you'll see when someone comes to their solo, they're flicking downwards.
Yeah.
Whether it's at the top of the neck or the bottom of the neck or vice versa.
But I think as well, it is something that quite a few students I teach, especially in the sort of band classes, struggle with is remembering what pickup to use, which pedal to stand on, settings for your amp, trying to sight read your sheets if you need your sheets. There's a lot of elements at play, and it does all come together eventually. It all becomes part of one system.
Yeah, now, you said you use that when you're gigging, but that's all well and good, but have any gigs ever gone wrong? I would love to hear some gig stories.
Okay, so that's the next one on the agenda that we've got today, which is gig stories. So we were in the pre-chat for the podcast. We thought it'd be fun to just share a couple of blinders. So a really quick one for me. I used to play in a 60s style group for a long time, and we did a lot of kind of like theatre gigs, those kind of things. Now, there's a place heading out, is it like Nottingham way maybe? It's like an open air thing called Conkers. Have you seen the sign for it on the
it's
M1?
that brown sign on the left of the M1, yeah.
So it's like down Nottingham way, I think, somewhere down there, middle of M1 basically. So we were late to the gig. We're always late. It's just that band in particular. And threw his gear up and got set up, put my in-ear monitors in and got ready to go. Got the thumbs up and I started the show. So I think it was a C chord I started on. I started the show and I went to strum my guitar. I then looked down. There's no guitar there. I had no sort of... I was expecting some strings, something. Yeah. There's nothing there. I'd essentially done this. And I looked down and my, I don't know if you remember it. Do you remember that Seafoam Green Strat that I had?
Yes, you had a matching Fender Jag at the time.
Did.
All right, yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
So that guitar is the predecessor to this one. I got to strum this chord, and as I look down to see why there's not a Stratocaster-shaped object in between my hands, in slow motion, the Strat's falling to my pedal board.
Nightmare.
And it hit the deck on my pedal board and made this almighty bang. You imagine
everything ringing out.
Kick this round car park and see what it sounds like. I'm sure you can imagine. Yeah. This is pre-strap lock. Basically, what had happened was the strap had come off ever so slightly, and I'd basically just moved my shoulder in a funny way, which led that to come off.
Yeah,
and it hit the deck. And because we're on in-ear monitors and we were using a silent stage, I just heard this gentleman on the front row just go,
"Oh, everyone's a critic."
Like, I don't remember how much of a mess it made of the guitar, but I just remember, it was just one of that, like, that's really not helpful. Stop doing that. So then I proceeded to pick my guitar up, tune it up the quickest I can, and then carried on with the show. And it survived. If I'd have done that with one of the Gibsons, I don't think I'd have been. So, it'd have literally, it'd just...
Bluetooth headstock.
Your Bluetooth headstock, I like that. So, I promptly in the break ordered some Charlotte strap locks on Amazon, and that's why I've got these on here. So, what about you? Have you had any blinders?
Oh, yeah, loads. There's one that comes to mind that you've just prompted some more, actually. I'm sort of shivering now, thinking of other. But there's one time I was gigging with a band when I was in high school, and we played a couple of songs in the set, ready to do a tab, singer was speaking, and the other guitarist in the band was going to start this song. Again, like you, we went to play, but nothing happened. Now his guitar was firmly in his person, but his pedal board had died, and we've all been there where your pedal board or your lead or your connection just deletes for some reason. And so as he's frantically scrabbling about to see what's wrong, we're sort of trying to make a few jokes in the audience and talk amongst yourselves. And at this point, I'm getting quite cocky, if I'm honest, because my guitar works. Great, it's just worked for that song. Anyway, he gets it running, he starts playing the song. Now, I came in a couple of bars later. He was playing lead on this one. I look at his guitar, as you do, you look at the other members in the band. He's got a capo on the 2nd fret. Where's my capo?
Oh, no.
It's in my bag over there. Now, I've had, let's say, the best part of 3 minutes,
Yeah.
which is a lifetime. When it's a silent stage,
Yeah,
that's a long
when
time.
something's going wrong and you're waiting for somebody else to solve a problem and you're not directly in charge of it, it's the longest.
It's 3 minutes of silence.
Yes.
So I essentially had to do some mental arithmetic to work out, well, if I'm on capo 2 and I'm playing a D chord, in real life that's an E chord. And I had to balance it. Now, no one noticed. I think I pulled it off quite well, actually. But yeah, it was scary. I should have known better. But transposition is quite a real thing in the music industry, don't you think?
It is. And I see what you did there, George.
Yeah, sneaky little sausage.
Smooth. So we asked I didn't, George.
I did. Hello
kindly,
to the Facebook group.
Asked the Facebook group and said it's all been a little bit covert and secret, this project. Only a couple of people have known about it because it's taken quite a lot of getting off the ground. And we wanted to release the best version of this that we could.
We're trying anyway.
So in a sort of, we're all a bit cloak and dagger, but you'd ask for some groups on the Facebook, some questions on the Facebook group, hadn't you?
Yes.
But for nothing sort of specific. So I think more people are being inclined to ask questions further down the line once now that they know what
they're getting themselves in for. But have you got a question from me from the group?
Yeah. So
I haven't really looked at these, to be honest. I put them in a Word document and I'm hoping for the best.
Okay. So Peter Reynolds asks how to transpose a key on a guitar to your own singing key.
Okay, Peter. So I try and sing in the band that I'm in, that I mentioned earlier.
Yep.
But as you've probably seen, when you look at chords on James's wonderful tab or Kirklees ultimateguitar.com on the dark side.
Be careful.
Yeah, treading carefully now. Sometimes you might find that it's not right. It might be too low or too high.
Right.
Now, let's say this song in particular is D to G. Round and round. Imaginative song I've just made up.
Right,
D,
okay.
G, D, G. Now, it doesn't take a lot of musical theory, but I appreciate musical theory is one of those things that is really hard to get the ball rolling with. Mm-hmm. But I know that a D chord can move, as can the G. Now, let's say this song is too low. We need to make it higher in pitch.
Okay.
Now, you could just grab a capo. I have one here in true Blue Peter fashion. Mm-hmm. Now, I could try going 2 frets up and playing my D and G. Yeah, that's a bit higher than before.
Yep.
Still not high enough for you? Okay. We're going up in pitch. What if you don't, like me, have a capo at that gig and you're panicking? Well, my D chord, all we've done there is raise everything by 2 frets at a time. So a D note, in theory land, has become an E note.
Right.
And my G has become an A. Because if I look at where a D is on the fretboard, 5th fret of the A string, if I move that up by a tone, 2 frets, that becomes an E. Same on G. 3rd fret of the low E string becomes an A. So instead of using the capo, I can do it in my head.
And I think that's stressed, just to interject there a little bit, George.
Yeah,
I think it's really important that, and it's something that I want to start doing within the Facebook group and the online community for the school, knowing, even if it's just the notes on one string, or being able to count up 3 frets from a G, what note is that? Mm-hmm. It's B flat. You know, I feel like that just little bit of knowledge is really, really important and makes it a lot better, a lot easier to understand and wrap your head around. But I feel like a lot of people think that they need to memorise all the neck immediately, and it's just a little bit at a time. I'd just like to sort of add to that a little bit, if I may. So, we both sing for various bands in the Kirklees guitar school sphere, and my approach to it, I'm predominantly a guitar player. I only sing because I have to, and if I want to play something very specific, like the sort of blues rocky kind of stuff that I did at Christmas, I wanted the challenge to sing it myself. I would never probably work professionally as a singer, but I'd be quite happy in a pub band doing that kind of stuff. Now, one thing that's always stuck with me, and regarding keys, is it Folsom Prison Blues, Johnny Cash, starts on an F.
Well, I hear that train a-coming.
Yeah, but when the band are warming up on that, you can hear him in the background finding the key.
All right.
Listen to the record, and you can hear him going. And Johnny Cash was, as always, my vocal range is really, really low, so I can sing all that stuff quite well, but not a lot else. Now, play the first chord of what you're playing, and see if you can find the first note of the melody.
Great bit of advice. Yeah.
There
you go.
But see, if I'd have just gone into that cold, I'd have struggled. But now, I hear a train a coming. Now, can I just pinch that capo for a second, and I'll show you how to work the other way? Because especially with gentlemen, I find it's the other way that's the problem. So if I take Wonderwall, for example, I'm not going to make you listen to it for too long, but we all know what it's supposed to sound like. Now, that first chord's an E minor 7, but it's got a capo on the 2nd fret, so I make it an F sharp minor 7, for those of us that are in Technicolor today. Mm-hmm. Now, Wonderwall's too high for me. I can't... I'm trying to think what's the first lyric.
The birds will start tweeting.
2 days.
There you go.
Yeah, but I can't... I'm not going to embarrass myself on camera trying to find that note.
You just know it's too high.
I can't seem to get it, or I feel like there's tightness in my throat. Now, I know somebody who comes and does some lessons for the school that could probably articulate this a bit better.
That'll be helpful.
I'm sorry if I'm butchering this. I'm sure she'll tell me off next time she sees me if this is the case. If that's too high, and just try and find the first note, and if it's too high, kick the capo down again. Try and find it. But bearing in mind, it's going to be a different note because you've completely changed the goalposts.
Yes.
Now, for me, I actually had to take it down 2 frets. To find, I can sing it in E a lot better than I can in and it's experimentation and being able to do it in an environment where you don't think anybody's listening to you, because you do, like the one thing that I have learned about singing and playing the guitar, you have to be moving plenty of air, and even in the studio, I won't practice singing if anyone else is here, but when it's sort of first thing in the morning and I'm the first one in, I will practice it, and I can sort of really kind of let it all out, and I sing a lot better for it.
Well, hopefully, Peter, that gives you a bit more of an insight.
Also, let us know on the group if you've anything else that you'd like to bolt onto that, because it is quite a wide topic.
It could be a whole podcast, couldn't it? For our technical focus.
Maybe we get a guest at some point.
That'd be great. Yeah, that'd be really good. So I have a question from David Bell for you, James, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Now, David says, I tend to play the guitar sitting down in the classical position, as most of his guitars are bottom heavy. Are there any advantages, thoughts, or comments on how to hold the guitar when sitting down? Now, before you go on, for those not watching, if you think of your flamenco-style guitar, arguably, and those who are watching, classical position, I would deem as sitting between your legs.
Yeah, I don't know if
and I'll leave it to you.
Show, yeah, sorry, George.
Okay.
Throughout the show, I've sort of switched from playing this on this knee to this knee, and the reason is I'm looking at this camera here, and the mic stand's getting in the way of me demonstrating what's going on. So I don't really, unless I am playing classical guitar, which I do occasionally, I prefer to have my guitar resting. I'm a right-handed guitar player, for those of us not in Technicolor, and I prefer to sit in the sort of more standard rock and roll position.
I've been sat today. You've been watching,
on the so the guitar's sat on my right thigh. What I'd say, David, is what's making you question that? Are you uncomfortable? Are you say that your guitars are heavy? I mean, some of the, some guitars like a Les Paul, for example, is a heavy guitar, and you can get the weight relieved ones that have got all the sort of bells and whistles and the, all the tricks, but they just don't sound as good. You need a certain amount of wood in a guitar to resonate. I mean, we're very, 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 very carefully trying not to go down this tone wood rabbit hole, because a lot of people get upset on the internet about that. But as long as you're comfortable and your wrist is in a good position to play, I'm not really interested. It's no concern to me. Sorry, I shouldn't say I'm not interested. It's no concern to me as long as you're not doing something that's going to give you some sort of repetitive strain injury.
Yeah.
What I would say, though, is if you're finding your guitars are heavy, it might be worth having a look on something like Amazon, getting a guitar strap that's quite wide, and just having it so that your strap is just taking the weight of the guitar a
takes the
little
strain
bit.
a bit, yeah.
He takes the strain and it's putting it onto your shoulder. Now, you can actually... are you familiar with a blues guitar player called Walter Trout?
I haven't seen him, no.
Right, okay. He plays at the Picture Dome quite a lot. I imagine quite a few of you guys will know who he is. He's the sort of guitarist. He's not...
All right, cool.
He's a touring musician, but he's not like Bonamassa or anybody. You know, he's not a household name, but he's a great guitar player. And he endorses these straps where it's almost like a saxophone strap, where it goes over both shoulders.
Oh, I've not seen
so
that.
the weight is shared between the two, between both shoulders for guitars that are quite heavy. If you know, because I suffer with a bad back, but then play Les Pauls from the 80s that weigh more than the heaviest object in the universe. Yeah. So as long as you're not uncomfortable, can I just read that question again, just to make sure I've turned to play sitting down in classical position. Any advantages, thoughts, comments on how to hold the guitar when sitting down? From what I've seen you playing, David, I'd say you're doing just fine the way you are, and you just stick in your own lane. There's another gentleman that's is a lefty in the group. He plays a gold top. Is it Robert?
Yeah,
Sorry, Robert, if I've butchered that. It might be Robert. We talked
over 1,000 members.
There's quite a few people in it, so please don't take it personally. I think it's Robert that plays like that as well. All I'd say, gents, is it looks like you're sitting on the end of your bed when you're playing, just watch the bottom of your back. Yeah. These chairs that we're sat in today have some decent back support. And if you're playing for sort of upwards of sort of 30 minutes to an hour or more, your back should be supported, especially people of a certain age that do tend to ache and groan and creak a little bit more than others.
When you're at the other end of the age scale, because you've got all that to look forward to. If you don't put the work in now, it's going to come and bite you later.
Yeah, so I think it's not necessarily what posture you go for, it's more, are you comfortable and are you being able to reach the notes that you want to? Have you anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would say what I say to my students, I have some students who play in that aforementioned classical position, some play in the more traditional. What I would say, a lot of players play with the guitar on a straight line, 180 degrees. And I disagree with that. I would say I advise a triangle. Don't know if you've heard of this before.
Okay, yeah, some of my students are chuckling now because I've got my own sort of idiosyncratic.
What I mean by this is having the headstock, if you're sat in a room, you want your headstock pointing to a crease or a corner of the room, so it's angled out slightly. And then the other side of the triangle would be if you can see on the video, my left arm is touching the headstock, and that gives you so much more open space to play with. Now, by doing this, you've A, got more space to move your hand, and B, I've got a much better field of vision to see my frets, rather than it being straight down against my stomach.
Yeah, I feel like it's a misconception of learning to play the guitar that your guitar needs to be sort of flat against where your belly button is.
Yeah.
And you play like this. Now, if you're Buddy Holly and you straps
John Lennon,
up here, and up here, you're fine, but I sort of describe it as the comfort cuts, what we call the comfort cuts on a Stratocaster help that really well. You've got like a bevel on the back of the guitar, and you almost want to wear it on your hip a little bit, and you almost want to sort of tuck it into you a little bit. You wear it on your hip as opposed to sort of square against. Like look at my shot on the camera now, and that doesn't look natural. Whereas I bring it across, now I tend to have I've purposely taken the strap off my guitar today, because I wear my strap quite low in comparison, but also I'm 6'3".
Yeah.
And I'm sort of in my composition, I'm quite long-bodied, if that makes sense, so I can afford to have my strap a little bit lower. You need to adjust it to, like James said, it's the C word, not that C word, it's comfort. Change the podcast completely. Yeah, that's it, yeah. No, don't go, don't leave. But also, if you're getting a tricky passage and you're struggling to get to that, raise the neck a little bit, and that adds just a little bit extra. And maybe you're inadvertently doing that by sitting in the classical position, but also you can drop your shoulder as well. It's a system. It's how it all integrates together. But I think rather than getting so wrapped up in how am I optimizing everything absolutely perfectly, it's like, first of all, are you comfortable? B, can you play it? And C, you don't look ridiculous.
Yeah, that sounds about right to me.
I think so.
Yeah?
I think so.
Brilliant.
So I'd like to round off the podcast. You mentioned a little riff, a little lick, a little bit of lead stuff.
Riff,
so we're gonna have a go at riff of the week now. So George is going to attempt to teach me. What are you going to try and teach me?
So it is a segment of the solo from Is This Love by Whitesnake, played by the late John Sykes, who died a couple of weeks ago. I'm no great Whitesnake enthusiast, but it's a cool riff. So it's slap bang in the middle of the solo. As he does, we're going to use our treble pickup on a Les Paul or bridge. And it goes something like this. One more time. So we've got a couple of techniques in there. No hammer-ons, unfortunately, from our technical focus.
Drop the ball there, George.
Yeah, I have. Continuity gone mad. So we're going to slide. We're going to start from the... Now, if you're in the car on the way home from work, it's going to be quite difficult. But if you've got your guitar sat in front of the telly, it's going to be a bit easier to try. And you don't have to try it, just have a listen. We're going to slide from the 10th fret on the B string. And we're going to pick that B string on 10. I'm going to slide it to 12 on the high E. 12 before hitting the high E.
And that's with the index finger, correct?
Yeah, first finger on that. Now, once we land on 12, with that first finger, we're going to hit the high E on 12.
So you're barring
at the same time, I'm going to bar that, yeah. As soon as we've done that, I'm going to pick that B string once more with that first finger. So far, we've got the slide. That's our first. We're then going to put our ring finger, whilst maintaining the first finger on that 12, we're going to play with your ring finger 14 on the high E. So can you see, if you're looking, we've got this sort of first finger on, ring finger on. I'm then going to pick the B string once more, because that's why the first finger's still there, because we're going to need it. We're then going to do the same again, but move that ring finger up to the 15th fret a little bit further. That's it. So
now, those two notes, if you're playing those slowly, are not going to sound amazing.
It's a bit of a clash, isn't it? A bit of dissonance.
But music's all about tension and release.
Resolve, yeah. I say this to my students all the time. The way I describe that resolve is if I... Oh, you couldn't help yourself, could you?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, that's the resolve we're looking for. Anyway, back to Whitesnake. So far, we've played our slide, our 14 B string, our 15 B string. Now we're going to finish off with a slide. Now I'm sliding from the 15th fret on the high E with my ring finger, and I'm going to land on the 17th fret. And we don't need to pick that 17. The momentum from that slide will help us get there. That's it. Now that is our riff for this week.
Okay.
We will touch base next week with that. Feel free to have a go in the week if you want. And
have a go with your improvisations, by the way.
Absolutely.
That's in the key of E minor, so if you're doing some soloing, it'll sound pretty, Maybe we could talk about licks next week, George. And
that would be a good idea.
In light of the challenge that we're running for February, how licks are important and how we use licks. So maybe we'll earmark that for later on.
Well, I think we should incorporate some licks in a bit of a jam. But before we do, I'd just like to remind everyone and ourselves what we've talked about today. So we've gone over our little introduction, whether our week has been a rock or a roll, and we've got a pretty balanced mix there. We've then looked at our technical focus, which this week was hammer-ons. Next week it might be double stops, for instance. Yeah. We then went neck deep and we looked at the pickup positions. We then had some questions from our audience on our Facebook group.
And if you've got any more, by the way, head over to the Facebook group. There's it's a really supportive, great bunch of people that are over there, and it's cooking on gases, that community.
100%.
It's doing really, really well. And then we took the questions, and then we learned that Whitesnake lick. So I think as well, if this format's fairly new for us, we're just sort of finding us feet, but we plan on this being a weekly show.
Absolutely,
it's going to come out on a Sunday every week. If you liked it, if you've got any comments, anything you'd like us to talk about, please do let us know in the description on YouTube, or if you're on another platform, head over to our Facebook group. I will put that as the first link in the description or the show notes. And yeah, we're onto a really cool thing here, and I look forward to doing a lot more of these. So thank you very much, George.
Otherwise, we will see you next week.
Should we play them out?
Let's have a jam in E.
In E?
Yeah, well, you said
right,
it.
Okay. You went through it. See what you did there? Cheers, guys.
Thank you.